Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hey, hey.
How are you doing, Kieran?
Yeah, not bad. Yourself?
Yeah, pretty good, yeah.
Although I was, I was struggling with because Ronan messaged me this morning about the quiz stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, how am I going to come up with a quiz in like half an hour? But I think I managed to cobble together something.
I was going to ask if Ronan had prepped you. I was a little concerned about how last minute this one might have been.
Quite last minute, and yeah, entirely down to me at every stage.
It's all right.
So sorry
Trial
about that,
by
guys.
fire, innit?
Yeah.
So I was chasing you on Sunday to get what the album was. Thankfully, I already have experience with Eminem, but yeah. It would have been nice to have a bit longer with the album if it had been something.
Yeah, sorry.
If you introduced me to something entirely new, I'd have been like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll listen to it in the car, and that's it. But
I'm still getting into the swing of having my own guests. Kieran, you're only the second person that I've managed to get on entirely of my own accord. So
I'm honoured. Who was the first?
Anna, who was also at my birthday. I don't know whether you'll have got the chance to meet her, but she did an episode on Taylor Swift, which was
really?
that was long overdue. I think a lot of people had been tempted to bring Taylor Swift on.
Were you just using your birthday as a means of like mingling with potential
networking opportunity?
That's what it's networking opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, everything's.
Well, you can take a sigh of relief, Ronan, because we've got the next several guests lined up until October now.
Oh, great!
So
yeah, no, that is
nice.
I don't know if you saw my. I sent a message to the group chat we've got with David.
Yeah, okay.
Just saying we've got the next 4 guests lined up. So don't worry. You can have. I know it's been stressful. I know it's been hard for you.
Yeah, no, I am going to get better at it. Well, I am getting better at it. I'm getting better at least at turning theoretical invites into concrete invites.
That's true.
That's one step.
That's true.
The next step is just doing that in a more orderly manner, I think.
Anyone been up to anything interesting this weekend? Anything going on or coming up?
Pretty mundane from me. I mean, Saturday I had to wait for a dishwasher man to come in and fit a dishwasher.
That
is
is
quite grown up.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Saturday during the morning we also did a clean.
Yeah, doing a clean. That's because I was going to say I was helping Hannah move out, which also just felt very like, yeah, just like you're spending your weekend doing practical things, I guess, isn't it?
I think this is the second time on the show that you talked about helping Hannah move out.
Oh, possibly. Yeah. I can't really remember the last time.
Because I think you mentioned the last time she was moving out, and you were talking about how you were like you had, I can't remember which album it was, but you had it on while you were doing the move, and it all felt very melancholic or something like that.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, well, God, I've clearly blocked it out of my memory. Yeah, no, it might have been Fleet Foxes. I feel like would that have been too early on?
That was very early on, to be fair. That was, in fairness, that was nearly this time last year, because we did that recording tomorrow a year ago. How did the move out go?
It was all right. It was a move out, really. Hannah had done, like, she has Fridays off, so she'd already been doing stuff on the Friday, so it wasn't too bad, to be fair. And I just got to feel quite manly because I was like listed to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, carrying boxes.
Yeah.
Did the washing machine man get you to help him out at all, Kieran? Did he?
I left him to it. He's a professional. Doesn't want me to get involved. What kind of a packer is Hannah? Because when I moved, I don't organise anything. I'm a bit crazy.
Yeah.
I can't be bothered to just sit there and organise everything or categorise stuff.
Well, I don't know because I didn't see the initial stage, I guess, and I was really brought in with things like, I don't know, her desk needed taking apart, and you know, like so it was big items that didn't need organising, I guess, on the whole. So I don't want to sort of commit any slander, but I don't know how much pre-prep there was. I think it was, but it's also weird when you're like living with other people, because really the extent of your stuff is just stuff that's in the kitchen, which is getting used to the last minute often, or stuff in your room, which is already kind of in a relatively sort of tight space anyway. So it's a kind of odd. It is something that makes it feel different from what I imagine growing up moving kind of feels like. Yeah, it was thinking. Oh, I mean, taking part the desk as well. That felt quite quite masculine. You know, I had to use a screwdriver.
Mm. Were you nice and like tender, or were you just going
I was tender, but in a firm and thorough way. You know,
authoritative manner?
Yeah, authoritatively tender.
Oh, you're gonna have the
man.
listeners swooning, right? Modern man. People weren't prepared for such an erotic episode.
I listened carefully to the table's feelings, but equally could be firm when needed.
Turning the screw.
Fucking hell. I don't know how to.
No, I'm not really sure how to move on from that. So I kind of regret sort of keeping on pushing it. Really,
I did have two things that I wanted to mention in our little like preamble section, I guess it is. But like one of them just being I was gonna do it right at the start because it feels like a right at the start kind of thing, but now I'm gonna like awkwardly just wedge it in here after you've demonstrating how you're like the modern masculine Ultraman. But I just wanted to say a thank you to like everyone who's been rating the podcast on Spotify. I've noticed that it's been getting more 5-star ratings, so you can actually see that people are doing it.
Great.
So that's cool.
Driving that engagement and that.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I wanted to bring up with you guys, I don't know how you guys feel about this. It's completely unrelated to everything we've been talking about, but the Mercury Prize nominations, right? I don't know if you guys have seen, but the Mercury Prize is like quite a prestigious musical award in the UK for the most part, right? You both know it,
Yeah,
right?
It's got a controversial kind of history, right? As in not.
I'm going to say that I've not actually heard of this Mercury Prize.
It's like the album prize, I guess, like album of the year prize in the UK.
It seems to usually pride itself on being a little bit more kind of less like the Grammys, but like less about the big names. This is what it claims anyway, that it's like less. Okay. It's more about like the indie stuff. It's more about like real awards for real musicians. But then every year there's always really questionable nominations. So like, I think last year Harry Styles' album was nominated, and most people were kind of like, well, like it's fun and it's nice, but it's not. Is it like prize-worthy against other things? And then this year, I saw like an article complaining that Fred Again had been nominated, and there was this whole article in the Independent like slating Fred Again, and like. I get he's like, some people see him as like a nepo baby and all that kind of stuff, but I think he's got some interesting and like exciting music. The thing that annoys me is that Arctic Monkeys were nominated for it, and not to get into an Arctic Monkeys rant, but the car's shit. Like their latest album, that's quite shit.
Yeah, I've actually not heard it, so I can't. I feel like I'm letting you down in the sort of co-hosting responsibilities, but I have not listened to it yet.
It's Kieran. Have you listened to the latest album?
No, I'm not really a fan of the Arctic Monkeys, so I've not.
Oh, thank God.
I don't think I've listened to any of their albums, to be honest.
This is the thing. Like, there's some from the north of England, so like obviously the Arctic Monkeys, you have to like them. That's kind of the rules up here.
Yeah. So you grow up with it.
If we're being, like that's the thing, and we did grow up with it, and I think their like first album and their early stuff is genuinely like really fun, exciting music. And then the kind of the middle section of their discography is quite. There's like individually there's enjoyable songs. So if they come on like a playlist or like when you're in like on a night out or whatever, there's individual bangers. But I find kind of a little bit monotonous to listen to like the whole of AM in one go, which is a sacrilegious thing to say, and I might get lynched up in the north, but like it all sounds the same. And then they had Casino Hotel, whatever it was called,
Tranquility Base Hotel,
Tranquility Hotel Casino, that's the one, yeah, which was like, it was not great, but we were all kind of like, oh, they're trying something. We'll see where this goes.
I'm a defender of that one, although not that I've really revisited. I rinsed it whilst doing essays in second or third year, whenever it had been. Second year, I think. Absolutely rinsed it, and then have never listened to it since. so
maybe you've got too much.
Yeah,
trauma.
I think maybe it just came out at exactly the right time that I could just put it on in the background on repeat, and it's quite a chill album.
It is very chill. I think that's what it was. It took people by surprise that it was such a change in direction for the once like very kind of vibrant, punky Sheffield band. It feels very like LA and glittery for them. And then the car just feels, I guess it's like more of the same, but even less interesting. And yet, for some reason, and I feel like they've not really done anything recently to push their like.
I was going to say, I don't think I've heard their name for the last like 10 years.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
They're not part of the conversation or the scene, and then all of a sudden, recently, Mercury Prize nomination, bollocks, and then also my man Damon Albarn has let me down by saying that they're the Arctic Monkeys are the last good rock band or some shit like that. And then there was another famous band recently that was like, yeah, the guitar music's dying and the only good guitar-based band is Arctic Monkeys. And it's like, they've not even done a rock album for years. Like, they're not a rock band. They're like a glitzy glam pop band. I don't know what they are anymore. They're just Alex Turner standing at the front, high off his head on drugs or alcohol. Is that slander? I don't know.
I have heard, like, because I've been watching like Glastonbury vlogs and all that sort of thing, and whenever they've played, like people's like response to them is that I don't know the lead singer's name. You just said his name, but I don't know his name off the top of my head. He's just like slowing down all the songs and like they're slightly out of time.
Yeah.
It's so odd.
One of my colleagues from work went this year and saw them. I'm pretty sure was saying that like everything was just so slowed down. It was like nobody could sing along to them. Nobody could like.
It's like it's done on purpose, just to make sure people can't sing along.
Yeah.
Throwing the crowd off.
I was gonna say, do you think it's a stylistic choice or is he just fucked?
Yeah, a bit of both.
I think it's Alex just being a prick. Yeah. I remember, I think I've seen them twice, once at Leeds Fest back in their like heyday, like they just released AM. So I think that was when they were at the height of their like northern popularity. And then I saw them a couple of years later in a festival in Belgium, I think it was. And I remember that time, I think like not at our gig, but at the following show they did, Alex Turner shaved all his hair off. And he was clearly like in the middle of some kind of like midlife crisis or something. And even then, that was still like 2018 maybe. Even then, it felt like he was not really performing the songs the way you wanted to hear them. So I don't know if they just really, well, it feels weird because you don't want to say like they as the band. Sometimes it doesn't feel like they as the band get a choice. But I don't know if it's just like Alex making all the decisions. But it just feels like they don't even like their older stuff or want to be associated with it at all. They're just like rebranding themselves.
Yeah, I don't know how bands go on so long. I'd be sick of it too if I'd been doing it for like 20 years.
Yeah, that's true. To be fair.
Bit of a segue, but sort of related because Kieran and I were DJing the other day.
No way.
I sort of feel like. I mean, not to anybody, other than Lois, Kieran's girlfriend. That was about it.
Yeah, I think she ended up with her AirPods in.
Why did you not lead with this rather than we had a washing machine?
What I was going to say,
I wasn't the weekend, to be fair.
Right. But just to make it a sort of smooth transition, I sort of feel like that's the appeal of if you're a DJ. Your appeal is in song selection and a myriad of other kind of like abilities, but it's not in just playing the same song over and over, which is what you have to do if you're in a band. So I could imagine like DJing for life and it always feeling like fresh and exciting if you want it to be, if you put your all into it. I somehow can't imagine playing in a band being like that.
What was it? I'll be interested. What's in your DJ set? Were you sharing a set, or was it like a DJ battle where you versus each other?
Back to back.
What was back to back?
Yeah.
What's your lineup? I don't know what you call it.
It's Kieran who has the deck. So Kieran was basically showing me and Alex the ropes of it. Alex has done a bit more than me, at least on actual decks. I sort of learned vaguely how to DJ just using my laptop during the pandemic, but that was limiting. Yeah, Kieran's the one who's been doing it some time, and it can do some just smooth as hell transitions.
Well, I try and make it smooth. I wouldn't claim to be like amazing or anything, but
how long have you been doing it for?
Probably a couple of years now.
Oh, nice. Then did you get decks like early on? Were you like, I'm going to commit to this, or was it like dabbling with it for a bit and then you're like, all right, go on then?
Yeah, it's kind of something I've always been interested in because my dad's a DJ. So we have decks and stuff at home, and he's got like turntables and all this sort of stuff. I mean, I could never mix with a turntable. That is ridiculous to me.
Next level skill, yeah.
I need it to tell me what BPM stuff is, otherwise I'm lost. But yeah, my flatmate got his decks in when was that, uni, or we just finished uni? And I never really thought about getting my own until I started playing with this stuff. It's
Yeah.
just something that's really, really enjoyable. I mean, Ronan probably attests to
Yeah.
that. Like, if you mix something that sounds like even 50% good, you're still like, wow, it's incredible.
I think it's one of those things where you do need someone else to kind of have, because they're quite expensive, aren't they, to like get into? They're quite difficult
You
to
can get like, I guess, bottom of the range, but they're not like crap or anything.
Yeah.
They're about £200.
But it's still definitely like one of those hobbies that you're like, oh, I'm going to commit and buy in.
Yeah.
I feel like you want someone to show you the ropes and kind of get us into it. And like you say, have that moment where you get a mix that feels good. And you're like, oh, yeah, I'm in.
It's quite intimidating as well. Like, there's tons of stuff. Like, even on the bottom of the range decks, there's like 100 different like knobs and little things you can twist. But
you feel like you've got like a broad idea of most of it by now, or is there still a few things on there that's like a bit of a mystery?
Yeah, that's what I was saying to Ronan when we was going through it, is that like I feel pretty competent in doing like a mix, but you end up just going towards like your comfort zone and what you've done before. Whereas part of the fun is obviously just trying different things. But then when you're in front of people and you're trying to mix, you obviously don't want to sound crap. So it's a bit easier to like just experiment stuff like when you're doing it on your own.
Have you done performances to live audiences then?
No. I'm nowhere near confident enough to do that.
I feel like one of the first times I met you was probably like,
Yeah,
I'm pretty
that
sure you DJ'd then. I could be misremembering that.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't count like house parties and stuff. I've not like done it at a club or anything.
But you have DJ'd to like a group of people who are vibing to the music. Yeah. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, I thought it was just a lot of fun. And you're right that like that moment when you get something, like definitely when you're doing it yourself, like you're far more forgiving of like so something doesn't sound quite right, but the moment you get it even close to how you wanted it to be is just such a good feeling when something. Well, there's one or two times when something landed in a way that I didn't even expect it to kind of like, like go together, and that's a great feeling as well. There's a kind of like just joyful chaos to it.
I'd definitely love to give it a go. I don't think I know anyone who like actually owns decks that I'd have access to, but it's something I've always wanted.
I've always been tempted to buy some. We'll see.
I would say it's quite an accessible hobby, to be honest. You can literally just download an app on your laptop or desktop or whatever and have a play on that. Obviously, it's not going to be the same, but you can get a rough idea.
Not going to have that satisfying tactile
feeling
of...
Yeah.
Are you there with like the headphone on one ear, kind of that kind of vibe?
Pretty much that whole vibe.
Yeah.
Is that so that you can like? Because again, like I don't even know like the process. Is the headphones on? Is that so you can preemptively hear how you're going to mix it, or is it so that you can hear it so without the distortion of like the environment that you're in? Like, does it give like a preview?
Yeah. So the headphones, you can have either one song playing. You can have no songs playing, but I mean that doesn't make any sense. You can have one song, both songs at the same time. So you can have the left channel or the right channel, or you can have them both at the same time. So you can kind of preview what the mix is going to sound like before you put them out the speakers.
Because sometimes you just hear such crazy like transitions from like some of these top DJs, and you're like, they must have. I don't know. I guess you just do loads of practice. Is it like with the comedy routine where you have like a set almost that you like perfect over time? You like run through it. Yeah,
probably, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's like knowing the songs that you're playing inside out helps as well, because that's something that I found when I was on it. Like even if you know in principle how you might want to move between two tracks or two tracks that you might want to go together and all that kind of stuff, trying to juggle everything at once where you're thinking about, well, it needs to come in at exactly this time to hit the hardest, like where the drop is or where there's a change in the song, like trying to just keep track of all of that, and you're doing it in real time. Obviously when we were there just together, you could basically redo stuff and you can kind of like keep a track on loop for far too long, which gets really grating, and you can sort of afford to do it if it's just a group of you. But if you're an actual DJ and you're there like just looping the same part whilst you try and find the next thing to move into, it would get so pretty insufferable pretty fast, I think. So it's like it's the speed at which you have to move if you're doing it properly, as much as anything else. There's lots of moving parts, I'd say.
Do you ever have that thing where like you'd be listening to music generally and you're like, oh, I'd love to include that in a in a set?
I did that. I did that all the time. Like when I think I don't know whether both you guys use Spotify or you use another
Mostly Spotify.
streaming platform which is available, but I would say Spotify is 100% the best music streaming platform just because of the Discover Weekly, and I use that all the time. And like every week I listen to it, and there'll always be at least one song where I'm listening to it, and I'm like, yeah, this will be really good if I could mix this.
How do you actually get songs to mix them?
It's a bit of a convoluted process at the moment because annoyingly Spotify don't let third-party apps use their songs, I guess, or their library.
Yeah.
So if I find a song that I like and I want to mix, I have to take it from Spotify and then look it up on another app, which I also have to subscribe to. And hopefully they have that song, and then I can add it to a library which works with like the software that you used to mix with.
Oh, okay. I always wondered that because, like, I thought were all these DJs just finding these songs on Spotify, whatever, like you saying, and then having to like purchase these songs off
Yeah, I
Bandcamp
think
or
a lot
whatever.
of the time a DJ will just download them. I don't know whether they have to buy them or they just download it from YouTube or whatever.
Yeah, I think a lot of DJs actually do end up sort of buying songs. I mean, obviously, vinyl DJs have to. Yeah. So it's an expensive pursuit at that point.
God, I can't imagine how expensive being a vinyl DJ would be, considering that like a load of the time they'll be mixing tracks and they'll be using one track of a vinyl that they spent 40 quid to own.
Mm-hmm.
There was a pub in like a Barry pub in Newcastle that had a vinyl DJ that we never went to the whole time we were there, Ronan. And then I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was near Big Market, like just off Big Market or something. No, I don't think so. Like we ended up in there on like one of my birthdays, like a year or two ago, 2-3 years ago, something like that. And it was somewhere like, oh, we've never been in it before, but we'll give it a go. And then on the top floor, there was like a pool table and a vinyl DJ, and he was absolutely killing it. It was sick. And it was like, what? Why did we spend 3 years at uni going to the same nightclub that plays the same tracks when we could have been here? Kieran, you were in Bristol, weren't you, beforehand?
Yeah, 7 years I was in Bristol.
7 years.
Yeah.
I imagine, was there a bit of like I imagine it's quite a sick DJing scene in Bristol, to be fair.
Yeah, the clubs are quite good in Bristol. So you've got a main one, which is Motion. And then there was one called Blue Mountain, but that closed. That was proper like grubby, like sticky floors, all this kind of thing. Ceiling dripping.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Iconic.
Yeah, and Lakota is kind of similar to that. It's all like really dark and dingy in there, but I think it just adds to the vibe, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, you know what you're getting. It's all like, you don't. To be honest, if it was bright in there, you wouldn't want to.
No,
I'm probably doing you a favor that you can't see anything.
They do that thing at the end of the night when it's like, right,
the lights go on.
Expose the remnants.
The spotlights come on, and it's just it's just swaying crowd of zombies. Yeah,
I'd say Bristol is probably predominantly drum and bass.
Yeah, the bass scene in Bristol is pretty huge, isn't it? I mean, even one of the times I went to visit Alex, I think you were there as well, Louis, but I can't remember which time, so I don't know for definite. But like,
I think I only was in Bristol once, maybe not. So potentially.
Is that for Love Saves the Day?
Yeah, but maybe this was like the day before. Anyway, I can't remember when it was, but all I remember was having some. Maybe it wouldn't have been that because it'd have been like winter kind of time, I think. And there's like that street in sort of pretty central Bristol, like that goes on to the canal, and like all the students hang out there. It's like a sort of the whole street's just full of like tables for like bars and pubs that are around there. Anyway,
King Street, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the one. And just one of the pubs there, like one of the pubs had like a live jazz band, and you go over to another pub and you go into a back room and it's just this bassy, like I want to say like tech house or something. I don't really know what it was, but like whatever it was just the bass just amped up to 11 like, and just shaking the walls. Just this sweaty little back room of a normal pub on a sort of relatively normal seeming street. That I just thought that stood out to me pretty heavily.
Is that because of like a student scene, or is that just like the Bristol scene regardless
both,
of like?
I think I think it started as a Bristol thing, and then I think Bristol is now probably predominantly students.
Yeah, I kind of see it as a bit of a student city at this point. I did like love it when I visited it, even though it was just like for a short while. It's a very cool city. Nightmare to drive around though.
Yeah, I think it's
God.
probably worse than London, to be honest. Which is an achievement.
It's London, but with like all the steep hills.
Yeah, like 90-degree hills.
Yeah, it feels like rally racing, like trying to weave through. Because it's double part traffic on either sides of the road as well. So like narrow streets made even narrower by all the cars on it. But I remember picking you up, Ronan, like you and everybody else from the Airbnb or whatever you were staying in. We were just having to whiz around.
Oh God, yeah.
I think we nearly crashed a couple of times, but it was fine. It was all good. It was under control.
I'm not sure we realised at the time that we'd like booked it quite so far.
You were like on a farm in the middle of nowhere.
Where was your B&B?
Like genuinely, like in some fields outside of Bristol.
I think I picked you up at like a random
not
petrol
like towards
station or
Bath.
some shit like that.
No, like I think it must have been like just deeper into Somerset towards Devon, I guess, like so going south of Bristol. It was like genuinely just on an A road opposite a petrol station. When we arrived there, I remember like it was at night and there was like a kind of a faint mist and like the flickering light of the petrol station, and it genuinely looked like the beginning of a horror where a bunch of teens go off and they all stay in a country house. And
you weren't teens,
yeah.
so.
We weren't teens, so we were safe.
Getting on a bit now.
That's
Wasn't there a thing though you were like locked out as well or something?
Yeah, and like I think the Airbnb had like a really like the people who owned it lived there but had a really threatening message on their door about like not disturbing them.
I just had a lovely sleep on Alex's sofa, very comfortable, right in the heart of Bristol.
That's all right for some.
Content, yeah. I missed out on the Clifton Bridge breakfast or whatever you guys did though. That looked really cool. I still need to go back and do Clifton Bridge because that's a sick.
I think I missed that as well because I had come later because I was also doing finishing my dissertation all around that time.
Oh my God, yeah.
Not finished. I like just to be clear, I had written it all, but I was doing my final read through and submission.
We all had to be
very clear, just to have it on record.
You're just locked in Alex's bedroom. In your dissertation, Hannah has been very protective of you, man. What a trip that was. That was class.
I think it's curtain call on that conversation.
It's curtain. Oh, incredible.
More of something else entirely.
Kieran, would you like to tell us a little bit about your album pick and why you picked it?
Sure. I mean, I picked it because I think probably the first album. It's not really an album, to be honest. It's a bit of a cheap pick. More like a compilation of his like best songs. But I think it's the first thing that I listened to all the way through as a young man. I think it's an album that I always probably go back to as well. I probably listen to it probably about once a year, I think. Something that I feel like you can listen to when you're younger. And it's one of those things where you probably just not listening to what he's saying, but you just like the sound of the song.
Yeah.
And then as you listen, as you get older, you sort of pick up things and you're like, oh, that's cool. Or that's interesting.
Like a Simpsons episode.
Yeah, exactly.
You appreciate it more with age.
Yeah.
It matures with me.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that like you used to pick it up like maybe like once every year, say. So it's not like you rinse it as such. It is almost like, is that you save it, or is it just that it occasionally pops into your head and you play it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I save it. I think it just comes into my head and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll listen to this. There's always like a couple songs that are my favorite, but then I think the rest kind of sort of move up and down.
How did it come to be your first ever like full listen through album?
So it's a bit of a weird story, I guess. So I never bought an album, or I don't even think a single, like a CD or anything like that. But my dad found this old iPod Classic, like when I was about 10, I think. And on that, it had a load of random pop songs and rock, sort of like chart music from around that time, which isn't my taste at all. I don't think I really knew what kind of music I liked when I was younger, but that album was also on there, which is a bit of a rogue choice considering all the other stuff that was on there.
Yeah. I love that era of just like random MP3 players that like your parents would dig out from wherever, or like files on a family PC or whatever, and it was like, oh, where's all this music from? And like, oh, my mate gave me or some shit. Like it's always from somewhere a little bit like dodge, but like you're there like no one's been buying these on iTunes. This random collection of songs.
Called LimeWire, I think, wasn't it?
LimeWire,
Yeah,
it was stuff like like Napster and LimeWire and all that kind of stuff. So you just ended up with these like random compilations. But yeah, I love how like you would always end up with this strange like, there's some like Avril Lavigne on there and some Coldplay and some Eminem, and it's just like what a rogue compilation of
it was
artists.
weird, but I guess I appreciated that choice because I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I can understand why you'd like go towards that compared to everything else on there. To be fair, like at that age.
And so at that stage, if you hadn't like if you hadn't found your taste yet and all that kind of, which I think is like quite like I feel like I had a taste at that age, but it was probably pretty much just what my parents listened to, I guess. Like it was not much more sort of sculpted than that. And there was very little agency, I guess, or limited agency. I definitely had things actually that like I picked out from the stuff that they listened to. But if you were still in that sort of discovery stage, had you heard something like this before? Was this like, as in, did you know of Eminem? Did you like, or were you just like, oh, that's interesting?
Yeah, I knew of Eminem before, but I'd only really heard his like chart songs because that's all I had exposure to, I guess. Also, I think what I'd mainly listen to as a kid would be like all the Now CDs. Because as I said like before, my dad's a DJ, so he's got all these like random crap CDs, like Now 1 to 100 or whatever it goes up to.
Yeah.
But I just remember listening to those, and then never really listened to an album until this one, I think.
With your dad being a DJ, does that mean there was a lot of music in the house all the time? Like when you were growing up, or was he kind of on his DJing hiatus while you were younger?
Yeah. Is that too much? Like bring work to home, like.
Yeah, I guess. I think my mum would probably kill him.
Yeah.
No, he like mainly goes out to work, like for DJing. So I think he just gets his fill then. I think I remember him just. He still does it now. He's just sat at his computer, sort of messing about with his music. But,
headphones on.
Yeah, headphones on.
Yeah.
Not like blaring it out. I mean, my parents will have music like around the house, but it won't be him just like in the corner mixing as we're going about the day to day.
So there wasn't like a pre-existing layer of like rap music that you'd be kind of becoming accustomed to before, like latching onto the Eminem stuff.
Not that I can remember.
I think Eminem's quite a lot of people of our generation's first rapper. To be honest, because it was in that period of like rap becoming more mainstream. I think we missed that era where, and I think you get a lot of this in this album of Eminem talking about how like he's a controversial figure, and I feel like we kind of missed the era of Eminem being, or we weren't like aware of his controversial period. We kind of joined in during the period where he's just, I don't know, an outspoken dude with some questionable and crazy lyrics, but we weren't, or maybe it's just because we weren't in the US, so we weren't. You hear about all this stuff where people were blaming him for like violent acts, and he's obviously like very kind of retaliatory against that in this album, especially, and in quite a lot of his discography. I think listening to this made me realize two things about Eminem: is that like, one, a lot of his music seems quite reactive, or at least a lot of his like most popular songs are reactive against, like he's always talking about like against his depiction in the media, but like we never really necessarily saw that depiction ourselves, so we only get like the reaction side of it. And also like the other thing I realized listening to this album, obviously because like you said, it's a compilation record, some of his best bits, it does show the range that he has as an artist.
Yeah, that's what I noted as well.
You don't realize how, I don't know, I never really thought about it, but there's not many artists who do comedy, because he does have some like very like over the top comedic cuts on this one, and like across the discography as well, but also super serious, super violent, super emotional. He covers like a whole range of things, whereas a lot of artists tend to just kind of be, they are the romantic one, they are the aggressive one, they are the whatever. And Eminem manages to pull off all these different vibes, especially back in like his golden era, I think, which was, I think Kurt and Cole was kind of like a closer to that kind of golden age.
I just want to pick up the that reactive element, the sort of reacting to the reactions. Like, and actually I think that this is something that struck me, and I think I was already aware of about Eminem, but my controversial confession is I think this is actually the first Eminem project I've listened to all the way through. I've listened to individual Eminem songs, but I've never sat down and listened to a whole album. So it was kind of interesting sort of immersing myself a bit more sort of deeply. And so something that also stood out to me, the kind of constant commentary on violence in media and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think it was, from what I gather, purely a reaction to people reacting to him. He clearly seems to go in on the get-go with that intent to sort of make a commentary of sorts on that whole relationship between violence and media, and then the public's reaction to that. Like My Name Is, which I think was one of his first kind of breakout tunes, literally has that sort of that opening line there, "Hi kids, do you like violence?" And it's immediately like it's a knowing nudge and a wink. It's a kind of playful parody of, simultaneously a parody of like the violent hardcore hip hop that had sort of gone up through the 90s, but also a sort of mockery of conservative backlash against that. That treated it with such seriousness. And so his response is this kind of like, almost like the next logical step of that whole kind of violent undercurrent to a lot of sort of hip hop strands, which is just to sort of really emphasize its cartoonishness. And so at once be a kind of like, I guess, like a parody of violent hip hop, but also perhaps more importantly, a parody of those who take it so seriously, and that really, really stood out.
Kind of like taking the media's weapon against him. Like, and using it for himself.
Yeah.
He's blamed for like child violence and stuff, and his first line is that.
Yeah.
I think it links into his track as well, like The Way I Am, which is obviously just everything that you say. It's like rolling with it. It's just not accepting it, but almost kind of pointing out the ludicrous narrative that the media kind of span against him, like in this period of like if you want to say that I'm all these terrible things, then fine, I am them. And then if you're going to stand there and go, well, actually, you're not. It's like, well, why would you say that I am these things as well? I think from my like memory of his discography as well, there's a lot of it does like hit on that fairly often, that you say, pointing out the hypocrisy of the media and also like their obsession with him, and then also like you say, the depiction of violence, and then it's almost this comparison between, because he was in this era of, I guess he was like slightly post the gangster era, or like to the end of it, because he did do a bit of stuff with like Biggie and stuff like that, but like towards the end of Biggie's life really, and obviously he works with Dre very closely and was like close with Snoop Dogg and that. But I think those artists were kind of in this era and much more heavily involved, like NWA and those guys were all more heavily involved in this kind of generally more violent gangster rap scene that existed around the artists. And then Eminem kind of came in on the tail end of that, and him like as himself wasn't involved in that kind of like raw real violence, but because the things he rapped about were seen as like, I don't know, like
uncouth.
Uncouth, yeah. Like all the things he touches on are quite uncouth. Like he has some very like aggressive sexual depictions in a lot of his songs, and he does rap about violence and committing atrocities and that kind of stuff. And I think it was interesting that in this period of time, the media decided to latch on this artist who was like spinning these narratives, these fictional narratives, but they were seeing that as like this horrible influence on America's youth, versus these previous eras where you had like artists who were actively involved in violence, but somehow this like this guy who seemed to be like riling up the people was the bigger issue. I think it was just a case of witch hunt America at the time. I think they were latching on to all sorts of things, because I think it was the same kind of era where they were like, video games is causing school shootings, and movies are causing mass violence, and Eminem is to blame for everything. They're determined to point the finger, and a lot of Eminem songs he talks about pointing the finger back at them.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how the album starts with probably like the most obscene song.
Oh yeah.
In fact,
it's so over
it's
the top.
so ridiculous.
Apparently they cut it for the clean version of the album, unsurprisingly.
How can you cut that?
Yeah, I don't know how you edit that to be
That FAQ is a prime example though, of like when Eminem plays his like goofy side, like over the top side.
Yeah.
And it feels really like almost children's Saturday morning dew being poured on people's heads, like kind of gross out humor energy. Obviously a lot more like 18 plus version of that, but like it has the same kind of energy as like a children's Saturday morning TV show where the whole premise is like doing gross bogey related things, like just trying to make people as grossed out and uncomfortable as possible.
Like Dick and Dom do,
because it's so visceral. Yeah, Dick and Dom do it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, how old were you when you discovered this album, Kieran?
Maybe like 10, I want to say.
So I guess you weren't quite latching on to the themes of
no,
FAQ
definitely
10.
not. I think I probably understood that it was a bit out there, I guess. Yeah,
you wouldn't play it like out loud with your mum and dad around.
No, I don't think my parents knew that this album was even on the iPod. I probably wouldn't have been allowed to have it, to be honest.
I think this is what probably made it even better, though. You had the secret,
forbidden
Eminem album.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have like any like specific memories from certain tracks? Is there any, do they take you back to certain times in your life or anything like that?
Nothing like that deep or meaningful, I guess. I mean, I can definitely remember times when I listened to the album, just like at friend's house and stuff when I was maybe at school, or like when I first got the iPod. Like I never had an iPod before, and I was like, oh, randomly now have an iPod Classic. Like that was pretty cool as a 10-year-old.
Yeah, that's
be able to show it off for people and be like, oh, it's a cool album.
Yeah, it was like a 128 gigabyte one as well, so it's beefy boy.
Do you think we've come back to the period of like iPods are now like cool and nostalgic again?
We're not there yet, are we? But it will happen 100%. It will 100%.
Definitely, yeah.
Unfortunately, I think it's just one of those things where you're just not going to be able to use it properly. I think I would actually probably enjoy having an iPod rather than a phone, because I can just put music on and not ended up on a Reddit or something, just scrolling.
I genuinely, I think I'd be happy as well. Having an MP3 player that just had an aux input and Bluetooth and just has your music on it. Yeah, sometimes you're like, I don't want to be on my phone. I don't want to be accessible or like stumble across some time-wasting app or whatever. But you still want your phone on you so you can listen to music in the car or whatever. So you're just like tied to it because it's where your music is. Yeah, I could see MP3 players definitely making a bit of it.
I remember being very resistant to the transition to smartphones in general. But like then I think even once I got a smartphone, I was still using my iPod Nano, and I was like incredibly resistant to like get Spotify or anything like that, because I was just like, I like having my music here all in one place, and it's my music, you know, like it's, of course, once I got really into Spotify, I fell in love. Spotify is incredible, and it has changed the way we can hear music completely. We wouldn't be able to do this podcast without Spotify, really. Not easily.
That's true. I mean, let's not show too much favoritism. We're on all the other platforms as well.
Exactly.
But I don't think anyone listens to us on those, so we do mostly have a Spotify.
Yeah, if Spotify want to give us a sponsorship, that'd be although they probably wouldn't pay us, like they don't pay their artists. There we go, I just burned that one down. Burn that bridge.
It's funny though, like how we moved into this world of like, well, your phone can do everything. It was this thing of like, why would you still want an iPod when you can listen to music on your phone and take calls on your phone and go on apps on your phone? And it's like, oh, you can do everything on one device. And then it feels like we're getting to a point where everyone's kind of sick of having everything on one device, because it means you just get distracted by everything.
Yep.
So now it's like, oh, let's separate things out again. let's go back to the days where we had a random Eminem album for no discernible reason on an MP3 player. That was it like a hand me down, or was it? Do you know where it came from? Like the MP3
I
player.
have no idea. My dad just found it and then brought it back home. It must have been some like teenager.
Some teenager had loaded up Eminem, and little did they know it would. Do you feel like it influenced your like musical listening going forward, or have you since kind of branched out quite significantly from?
Branched out, I would say. I don't really listen to that much hip hop. I mean, I like 90s hip hop and that sort of genre, but I don't listen to any of the newer. Like, I don't actually like any of the newer Eminem stuff.
Mm.
No,
I'm quite stubborn as well, so I just refuse to listen to it. Like, going back to Simpsons, I also refuse to watch the new Simpsons.
Yeah.
I think. Why is the Eminem Simpsons comparison so
it does
bad?
just get richer and richer the more you investigate it.
Yeah.
Try not to be too negative on this podcast usually, but like, yeah, new Eminem's not great. It kind of has to be said.
I can't really comment on it because, again, I haven't listened to it, but I also
you're
don't
not
want
missing
to.
anything.
Well,
No.
I've not listened to much, but one thing that's again stood out to me is all of that kind of humor that we've been alluding to feels sort of lacking from newer Eminem. It's very serious. It's very like this is real hip hop. So it also feels like an old man lashing out, which doesn't really work that well in a genre that has for most of its life been so youthful and so kind of like and sort of celebrated innovations and new ways of doing things to then use that medium to lash out against what's new and kind of different just feels completely misguided. So maybe it's things like that.
Yeah.
But I have to confess I've not really listened to much of the new stuff either. So it could be a lot. Yeah, I don't know much about it.
Not to rinse it too much, it's kind of lacking on all fronts, really. It's not as technically impressive. The songwriting isn't where it used to be. The delivery is very strange. He went in this kind of new direction more recently. But it's weird because like he's still undisputably one of the greatest to ever do it. His back catalogue is so but saying his back catalogue strong might be he's always had a bit of an inconsistent album collection, but like when he's been at his strongest, it is like top tier and so good that it kind of you can't write him off. You can't be like, oh, Eminem, he's shit. All things balanced, he's shit. It's like no, like his good stuff, and particularly like obviously this album being a compilation album highlights that when he's been at the top of his game, and when he's been at the top of the game, he has been so head and shoulders above the majority of people in the genre.
If you could travel back in time and hear this period of his career, if you see this live, it would be incredible.
What's quite interesting is, I don't know if you guys knew this about Curtain Call, but the reason it's called Curtain Call is because this was potentially a point where his career was going to end.
Yeah, didn't he have a hiatus?
Yeah, like he'd pumped out a bunch of stuff, and I think he was just feeling burnt out and like had, wanted to spend time with his daughters and stuff like that. So they were like, I'm taking a break, and then they put out this compilation album, and they're like, Curtain Call, because this might be the finale. And then wasn't. But man, what a high it would have been to end on. What's interesting is when you were like, oh, I've not listened to any of his newer stuff. He actually released Curtain Call Part 2 last year.
Yeah, so
which I've not listened to. I don't know what would be included from his newer stuff, to be honest.
I'm gonna have a look at that now. Actually, is it just all of his new stuff?
It must be like the stuff since,
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it's not stuff. He's still got quite a lot of good features though. Like Snoop Dogg's on there. Yeah.
He's obviously still a very respected name.
He could have done really well actually as a feature artist. Jumping on tracks and kind of like. A bit like Snoop Dogg's done, really, because like Snoop doesn't really release. I mean, I think he does release his own albums, but he's not really known for his albums, is he? He's a personality who also hops on songs and often immediately elevates them because nobody can quite do what he does. Nobody sounds as smooth and laid back.
Just like a verse of him saying his own name.
But like, I mean, it could be him reading out the dictionary. It could be him reading out the phone book. It would sound smooth, and you could sort of see Eminem having carved out in an alternate universe a similar niche where that was really what he was known for, just jumping on and kind of like jumping on a range of different artists' tracks and kind of adding something a little bit different and a little bit sort of wild and maybe a little bit humorous if he'd kind of like sort of kept that up as well.
I was trying to think if I'd made this up and had a bad dream where this was true, but I'm afraid it is reality. I was going to say, didn't Eminem feature on an Ed Sheeran song once? And
Oh, really?
Oh,
yeah, he
no.
did.
Oh, can I change my
I don't
album pick?
understand this.
Yeah.
Or do you want to change it to an Ed Sheeran one?
Oh, there you got me.
What era of Eminem do you think you'd have wanted to meet in real life? I think modern day Eminem is probably like the most approachable.
Yeah, I mean, if he like, there are songs where he really shouts at his fans and and stuff like that. So if he's anything like that in real life, that would be, apart from ironically Stan, where it's like the craziest fan, but actually he writes a very, the tragic twist is he writes a very sympathetic letter right at the end. And actually, talking of Stan, can we just acknowledge what an incredible, listening to that for the first time in a very long time.
It is a masterpiece, I think, Stan. I think it's one of the best songs, like potentially.
Incredible storytelling.
The storytelling, the melody, I thought did you both listen to the Elton John version as well?
Yeah,
was that what it was? Was it Elton John? The live version?
No, there's two versions of it. Yeah.
Yeah, the live versions of Elton John. Yeah, and this might be a hot take, but I prefer the Dido version, the original.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I prefer the original.
Yeah, no, I do.
I think love Elton, but I think he was not quite hitting the note.
It is live. You can't. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't force it too much. But that was just a prime example of like Eminem's incredible like penmanship, like say storytelling, but like storytelling in such like a relaxed. He makes it. I think that's where Eminem's talent stands out. Is that I think he makes it look easy.
Yeah.
And so relaxed, and I think that's why he gets so many clones. Is because there's a lot of white men who look similar to him who think they can do it too.
Yeah.
Based on like his inflection and the reality is that none of them even hold a candle to it. But I think the reason they think they can follow in his footsteps is because he's just so he just makes it look easy. Stan feels like such a simple narrative, but like we could sit here for like months and not be able to come up with such a simple way of conveying it in such a satisfying rhyme scheme and this like to and fro letter writing.
Yeah, I've got to say as well, like the ability to write a song with a message, if you can call it that, whilst also maintaining incredibly engaging flow and all of that kind of stuff. You're right, he does make it look easy, but it is so hard. The number of like conscious hip hop songs, I guess, songs with a message, songs with meaning, which sometimes you go into YouTube comment sections, you get people sort of pining after. The problem with a lot of them is that they completely sacrifice flow often when they're doing that. They also often sacrifice any like nuance or kind of like insight, because in order to make the message, they basically just had to kind of like do a simple flow, sort of saying like, oh, you really shouldn't, hero worship too much. It can get quite dangerous, and they make that rhyme, and there's kind of like not much more to it. Whereas like this, through that sort of storytelling technique, and then also whilst somehow managing to tell that story and maintain an incredibly engaging flow at the same time, it makes it hit a lot harder, and it becomes a much more sort of perceptive kind of engagement with that sort of subject, the parasocial relationship, to the extent that like I genuinely can't think of any other song that has engaged with that topic ever. Like it's literally acknowledged in the culture, so to speak, as the peak of that, because we call fans stans even still, and that comes from that, right? That's not like that wasn't a thing before.
Yeah,
it does.
yeah.
Which is a strange thing to kind of latch onto because obviously it's a very
Yeah.
negative view of a super obsessive fan. And now people are like, I stan so and so, and it's like you shouldn't be doing that.
It's not like a particularly long song either, is it? I think it's like 3.5 minutes.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah, that's a good point.
But there's quite a lot crammed into there.
A lot.
It's longer than you think. It's actually
Is it?
6 minutes
Oh, it's 6
44.
minutes.
Is it?
But
That's also a testament to the song that I could have believed either of those.
yeah, it doesn't feel like a 6 minute song. I've never realized. I
No.
was fully like agreeing, like when you're like, oh, it's only like a 3. I was like, yeah, definitely. But like, I've got the album open now, so I just glanced over at the time, and it's 6 minutes 45. I never realized it was that long. It does not feel long. God, that's like I saw Oppenheimer recently, which is a 3-hour movie, and that does not feel like a 3-hour movie either.
Ooh.
So good art. Clearly,
Have you both seen it?
I'm seeing it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have
Have you seen it, Kieran?
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. It's a good film.
Oh,
I think you'll enjoy it.
okay. Yeah, no, I'm
have
very
you seen
excited.
Barbie as well, Kieran?
No, I haven't seen Barbie yet. I'm going
Oh,
to.
you
at
didn't do
some
the
point.
Barbie hammer.
No, I didn't.
I did them on the same
did
day,
you?
and
Did you?
it was a great day. Yeah, we did Barbie in the morning and Oppenheimer in the afternoon. And some people were like, "Oh, that's definitely the wrong way round." But like, Barbie was so much fun that I wouldn't want it to be like overshadowed by the immensity of Oppenheimer. And Oppenheimer is the kind of movie that I think you kind of want to let sit with you for a bit afterwards.
Mm.
So you wouldn't want to be sat in Barbie like, "Oh, I'm having so much fun," and also thinking
Wait,
about
so
the
you
bomb.
saw Barbie first and then Oppenheimer?
Barbie first, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I would do it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say
think it
that's-
just makes more sense.
I always think
Yeah.
I always thought Barbie had like some surprisingly kind of like touching themes that maybe would just not hit in the same way if you've just been dealing with the weighty issue of the atom bomb.
The existential dread
Like,
of
At that
living
point,
under.
you're so desensitized to everything. You know, like I just feel like the atom bomb
Yeah.
just trumps everything, really, doesn't it? It's like,
Mm.
oh yeah, well,
It
but it's
really
not
does,
nuclear
yeah.
destruction, is it? Like it's just a bit of a party pooper. I have seen Barbie. I got my priorities right, so I saw that the opening weekend, and that was very good. I enjoyed it a lot.
Not to make this a movie podcast, but strong recommendation for both.
Really, I've heard mixed things about Barbie.
I actually
it's
thought
great.
Barbie was. It's funny. It is actually surprisingly emotional. I welled up a few times.
Oh,
You know the bit when she's on the park bench, Louis.
yeah.
That got me a little bit.
Oh,
But it is mostly just quite funny, and it's a sort of light satire, I suppose. Like nobody seems to be calling it a satire, but it is essentially a satire. Just like it's not necessarily trying to reinvent the wheel, but it is.
I loved how like the director like managed to just perfectly walk that line of like, because obviously it is like funded by Mattel, but the director managed to take the piss out of Mattel. Well, but not too like they didn't go too far, but they definitely were like poking fun at like this corporate. Oh yeah, it's great. It's good. It's a good watch. I think a lot of the like negative things people have said about it is because they're, I don't know, insecure.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I'm going to be very open-minded because I just appreciate that it's something new rather than Avengers 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
I laughed more in Barbie than I have in any Marvel movie ever.
Yeah.
So give me a good chuckle. I wonder what Eminem's take on Barbie.
Super fan, I reckon.
I reckon he would be now. I reckon he'd take Haley.
Yeah.
Take her along. I don't know how old Haley is now.
So who's Haley is?
She's got about 30 probably.
It's Eminem's daughter. Yeah. There's a lot of love for Haley on this album. That always comes out in his like more emotional songs, as they do tend to be about her. I think was it When I'm Gone and Mockingbird in particular are both like pretty directly directed at her, and they hit the feels a little bit more than Fack.
Yeah.
It's what makes compilation albums a bit of an interesting one, is that like usually with an album it's all very kind of, well, depending on the artist, but like a good album is kind of selected to take you on a bit of a journey.
There's normally
sometimes
like a thread,
it's a narrative. Yeah, there's like a thread. And then with the compilation one, it's just like, which ones were big? We'll just throw those ones on. So you do get this kind of strange, The Real Slim Shady followed by Mockingbird is quite an interesting 5. But I think at this point you're so comfortable with like Eminem's back catalogue because I also listened to him loads like when I was younger. To be fair, especially like teenage years. I think there's like a Eminem latch on period.
Yeah.
Ronan, I don't know if did you listen to him much, or because you were saying this is the first time you listened to like one of his albums all the way through. Were you ever an Eminem kid?
Yeah, that's
or...
what I mean. Like, I think it sort of passed me by, really.
You did a whole Slim Shady era, buzz cut. Didn't quite dye it blonde. To be fair.
I would still consider doing that, you know. But you sort of had the Slim Shady look, Kieran. I don't think you have it anymore.
Yeah, I've still
you?
got it now. That's what I'm rocking now. Yeah, I'm probably looking like a bit of a fangirl at the moment, but the two things aren't linked, I promise.
Was it inspired by Eminem, or
No,
is that just a coincidence?
Well, I guess maybe loosely because he had it first, but I didn't look at Eminem and I was like, oh yes, call me Stan.
Been lurking in your subconscious since listening to this since 10 years old.
Possibly.
You just always wanted to do donuts in a parking lot and spit in someone's onion rings.
I guess because it is a sort of like the shaved head and the shaved head with the sort of bleached hair is part of a broader revitalization of a sort of late 90s, maybe early noughties kind of culture, isn't it? So it's probably as much like that sort of that general, you know, the sort of fashion cycle thing seems to be a sort of phenomenon. Hence, I've got I'm going to get my hot take in here. I've just recently, you've probably heard this before, Louis. I don't know whether you all have heard this, Kieran, but you saw the glasses. Basically, I just recently bought some frameless glasses, and I'm making the bargain that in a couple of years' time they're going to come back in, because I think they were huge, right? Right at the end of the 90s into the early noughties, everybody wore them.
I'm gonna have to Google frameless glasses just to get like
Are we talking about like
so vaguely like your dad's glasses as well. You know, it's just kind of vaguely like nondescript.
Do you have to put them on with your thumb?
Yeah, they're not quite like that. I did try looking, but but it's vaguely that sort of thing, and they've already come back in sunglasses. But I'm not really seeing them about so much in glasses. But I'm hoping them basically, and my reasoning for it is that at the beginning of the 2010s, glasses frames were really thick. You know those 3D glasses? They all look like those 3D glasses. And then they kind of went into sort of thinner frames as it got into the later 2010s. So the logical next step is only that it's going to go frameless. And early noughties are back in other areas of fashion. So it's just going to happen. Mark my words. I want to hear on record now.
How many did you order?
I just got the one pair. I can't sell them on if it's not a full business plan, unfortunately.
How frameless are we talking? Like
I don't know how else to describe it.
Because I'm looking at pictures of Eminem in glasses, and I'm like trying to decide if these would count as
rimless glasses is more the term I think that I should have been using. I'm trying to. Let me try and find.
We all come away from this episode and just start dressing like 90s Eminem, early 2000s Eminem.
Oh, bloody hell, it's asking me if I'm a robot. I don't know what I've done to make it so suspicious, but...
Right, I know this isn't audio friendly, but this picture of Eminem...
Yeah, exactly. No, wait, hang on. I haven't seen your picture yet, but I have seen online photos of him, and it's pretty much along those lines, to be honest. Let me have a look. Let me get onto the one that you've just sent in. Yeah, that's pretty much it. They're slightly less rounded. Okay, but they're more.
There's a little bit of a rim there.
But it's not far off. Look, that's probably late 90s Eminem. If you look for him in the early noughties, they'll have been completely rimless. I swear. I'm not sure that's true, actually. I can't find any of him with entirely no rim. But
you haven't got like a pinboard and string behind him in all his glasses.
Not gonna lie, it isn't that far off that. I've been spouting this theory for some time.
I love what you've essentially done. It's like it's really similar to what like crypto bros do, or like stocks.
You found the trend.
When I was explaining it to one mate, he did say. I love seeing the glee with which you talk about this because it's a bit like seeing a man with a gambling addict. It's that sort of like. But this next horse, though, I can tell you, this next horse is definitely going to be the one because and there's a pattern. There's a pattern, right?
I promise you, Bitcoin is the future. Like, everybody's going to be using it. They're already using it in Venezuela. Rimless glasses is coming back. Kieran, would you ever mix in some Eminem, some Curtain Call classics into your DJing? Have you ever incorporated him?
I haven't actually, but that would be pretty incredibly difficult.
I reckon it's doable.
Yeah,
But yeah,
sure. There are plenty of songs on there that everyone likes.
a little bit of lose yourself in there. Do you when you return to this album, do you listen to it in full, or do you is it kind of dependent on your mood? Do you dip in and out?
I won't listen to it in full. I'll probably skip the more mainstream ones just because I've heard them
so many times at this point. Yeah,
I probably wouldn't listen to Lose Yourself or Real Slim Shady. I'd probably skip that as well. But majority of it I would just listen to.
Is there any particularly standout tracks then, for you, the ones that kind of take you back?
Yeah, I mean Stan we've already covered, but that's kind of a song that I listened to and then I was a bit I guess the lyrics kind of have a meaning rather than just there for the sake of being there, I guess.
That's one of those ones that matured with you.
Yeah. I don't know, I'd say probably maybe Cleaning Out My Closet is probably my second favourite one. I definitely much prefer the more serious, tonally serious ones where he's talking about stuff that's meaningful to him rather than the over-the-top silly ones, which is still good, but I prefer listening to the more heartfelt sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think I've always enjoyed him, and that kind of side of Eminem the most. Is that one way the ones that you feel like you can emotionally resonate with a little bit more and are a bit more humanizing.
Yeah.
I appreciate ones like Just Lose It because it's it's funny and it could be fun to kind of have on a party or whatever. They're not ones that you find yourself returning to very often, I feel. I mean, I say that and it still does have 226 million listen.
Yeah, it's probably his most popular one, isn't it? Or Real Slim Shady.
So to be fair, so Just Lose It is that one that's a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
But Lose Yourself is 1,837,000,000 listens. So that's up there, and Without Me is 1 billion, and The Real Slim Shady is also 1,432,000,000. So, oh my god, I'm Mockingbird's up there as well, actually, which is pleasantly surprising to be fair. I guess that's you can kind of expect that on a greatest hits album to some extent. Although unsurprisingly, FAC is the lowest listened, but it's 91 million.
Do you guys have a favorite song from the compilation?
We've already gone over Stan.
Yeah,
obviously.
I have to.
Yeah, it's probably the most
agree
obvious choice.
I mean, Stan is just objective, as in it is just objectively a very, very good song, and I think you could play it to somebody who's not an Eminem fan and would see the value in it. I was thinking about this before, as in this sort of top 3 song kind of thing, and I did feel bad because I was kind of picking some of the I was picking some of the most famous ones. I really enjoyed the sort of Slim Shady ones, like My Name Is and Real Slim Shady.
Yeah.
But actually, I want this is always a good opportunity just to highlight something that we haven't discussed. So putting the rampant misogyny aside, which is hard to do, but Shake That.
It's quite prominent.
Shake That is actually just a really banging tune in terms of the beat and just the little melodies and whatnot.
It's bombastic, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good description for it. Bombastic. It's funky. I think something that hip hop and funk obviously just have a really strong tie in terms of their sort of really hip hop comes out of funk and sort of funk break beats. That sort of that lineage is also kind of run parallel to one another and inform each other throughout their existence. And I just think that there's some songs that really emphasize that, and there's times when just hip hop feels like just the logical progression of funk, I guess, and I just sort of love when you can kind of hear that come through, and I think that's one of those songs where it does.
That'd be an interesting DJ challenge to kind of integrate Shake That while cutting out the misogyny.
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
Because that would be too good to lose, Are you picking out a third one, Ronan, or are you just settling on?
My 3 was I don't know. I don't know what the 3 would be, but I feel like I've named 4 there, so I feel like I'll just sneak all of those four in.
Okay.
You know, I'm going to include the two
Yeah.
sort of Real Slim Shady ones, Real Slim Shady and My Name Is.
It's almost like ones where it's almost like you don't have to say why you're picking them because they're so universally.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I can develop it, I guess, but yeah, they're so recognized. I
you
guess,
don't have to do
but I
it.
guess
I'm not calling you
some of
out.
the stuff that I touched upon earlier about the sort of quite like the goofiness. I like the commentary on. Well, yeah, like what we were talking about earlier about its relationship with that media discussion around media and violence. It feels very, just to throw in a wanky term that hasn't been brought up this episode, but is, you know, I feel like it's one of those ones that's bound to have come up plenty of times before on this podcast. It feels very postmodern. It is a postmodern archetype.
We're not a wanky podcast, Ronan.
But like, as in, it reminded me in some ways of like what Tarantino did for movies, I guess. And when on the topic of sort of violence, it becomes, and violence in music, just as, you know, Tarantino sort of touched upon the topic of violence in film, it becomes simultaneously an example of and sort of celebration of that very sort of issue, whilst also being a commentary upon that issue, which is sort of quintessentially postmodern, I suppose. And so I like that. I like that it holds that within it. All of that's a kind of convoluted way of saying it's slightly provocative and provocative probably. It's provocative, but doing so in quite a fun, playful way.
That's a really eloquent way to wrap up a lot of Slim's early career, in fairness. Provocative, but in quite a fun, playful way. I just want to touch on one other song, because like I feel like my other top two have been covered. And obviously it's a compilation album, so like they're all fantastic. They're all cream of the crop. Creme de la creme. But I also really enjoy like The Way I Am, because I feel like it encaptures this element of like this kind of the brooding, moody, angry side of Eminem's career, but the angry side that's kind of this like underlying rage in a way, or like I don't know how you'd like necessarily put it. It's not necessarily rage, but I think it's interesting how like different people kind of have their like angry songs, right? And some people have like go towards music that's very kind of like actively aggressive, so like a lot of like heavy metal, thrash and all that kind of stuff, and people like kind of channel their violent, not violence again, but like, you know, sometimes you just want to listen to an angry song and let it out that way. But I think something that I latched onto with Eminem early, and something that's kind of I've progressed with like listening to other artists as well, is I always enjoy when you're kind of needing one of those kind of angrier songs. I always like enjoy those ones that are a little bit more kind of withheld, but it's still present. So it's like it's not all out aggressive thrash metal. It's kind of more this kind of measured violence in a way.
Yeah.
I just think that's quite an interest. It's kind of this like sense of like in this song in particular, like his message to the media is, look, I don't have time to fuck around with this. Like this is kind of beneath me, but we're just going to address it and move on, kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. I've just always enjoyed that kind of when Eminem has been more kind of under the surface in his approach, rather than the ones where he's just blatantly out there going like, I'm going to kill you and I'm going to slit your throat and stuff. It's kind of this more like reserved, careful who you're dealing with kind of energy on tracks like that. It's that kind of like the melody is kind of menacing and the delivery is menacing without being upfront and aggressive. It's kind of this contained violence in a way.
Quite subtle in a way.
Measured, I guess. And then Stan, obviously we've all agreed. And then you could just take your pick, Lose Yourself, The Real Slim Shady, Without Me. I love Without Me because it's just so fun and playful. And in the same way, kind of sticking it to the media, but in a much more kind of like jolly, almost way.
I mean, as you say, like it's a compilation, so it's a bit cheesy, I guess. But I wouldn't say there is a song on this entire thing where I'd be like, it should probably be dropped. Even the stuff that I'm not too keen on because it's just overplayed. It still obviously has to be on there.
Yeah, but it actually works really well as an album. Like you could tell me it was an album and I'd probably believe you. You know what I mean? As in like as an album in its own right, rather than a sort of compilation album. Even down to having the little intro track.
There are actually like original songs on this album.
Oh, are there?
So it's a compilation album. Yeah, so I think Fak is one of the original ones. I can't remember what the other two
Interesting.
were.
Okay, yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. That can't be that common.
Take the time to actually like add a little bit more
And
to
to
it.
give it
Yeah.
that cohesion.
It's not
I
just
guess.
thrown together. Yeah, there's a bit more thought that's gone into it than some compilation albums. Lovely. Well, thank you very much for the album pick. It's been a pleasure returning to Eminem.
No worries.
I hope you enjoyed your first full listen to him, Ronan.
I did.
So you're saying you have put a quiz together for us?
Yeah, I got a little quiz for you.
What time is it, Louis? What time is it?
It's time for the quiz. Do 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 do.
Bing.
Lovely.
There we go. That's
I heard you lean in for that ping. Your chair creaked.
Oh yeah. Well, hopefully that will add a nice little like subtle sound design
Build up
to
to
it.
it. Yeah.
So if I was to say that I didn't have any questions, did you guys have a quiz yourself, or would we just skip this section?
We'd get one of us to Google things really quickly to throw together.
I've like you'd
Which
think
we've had
that,
to do in the past.
Yeah, you'd think that this being like something I co-host, that I'd like know the format, but I've literally just forgotten to do a quiz before and had to just look up random things. I think like I had a
On the
really difficult
fly.
one time. I had like the album was just called The Letter Y. So I had to look up the letter Y on Wikipedia and try and find a fact about it.
Okay, let's start. I'll start with an easy one. How old is Marshall Mathers?
Oh fuck.
Ooh.
I'm gonna ding in
Okay.
on this one. And well, first of all, I'm gonna clarify: is this gonna be a closer to? Because I feel like neither of us are gonna get it.
Yeah,
bang
we'll
on.
go closer to.
Okay, that puts me at disadvantage, but I'm okay. I'm going to go with 45. Feels like a nice, solid
Okay.
coverage of that decade.
I'm going to go for. Oh God, I'm imagining a bit like a birth year, and I'm trying to go. So I'm imagining that he was born in 1981. That's my guess. So now I just need to do some basic maths. So I'm going to say he.
I'll edit this to be shorter so it looks like you weren't struggling.
I'm going to say he's 42. Does that fit together?
Oh, so you've gone less then.
Yeah.
So Louis wins. He's 50.
Oh, bloody hell, really? Wow.
Hey! Bloody hell,
Yeah, he's an old
getting on a
boy.
bit, isn't he?
Yeah.
Also, just a quick aside, again, not audio format friendly, but the picture I've put in on the general chat, do you not think he looks a little bit like Jonah Hill?
He does look a bit like Jonah Hill. Yeah, I see that.
Mm.
The more I'm looking at him, the... Anyway, sorry.
In the song Without Me, how many times does Eminem say "Without Me"?
Wow, that's a good question.
God.
The temptation to try and sing it through in my head and count, but I feel like that's just not...
Was
Again, we'll go closest.
14.
I'm going to go with 17.
Oh, it's actually only 8 times.
Ooh.
Oh my...
You both way overshot it.
Yeah.
Let's
20.
go with, when were curtains invented? And what era were they first used in?
Ooh, okay.
That one caught me off guard for a second. I was like, curtains. Oh yeah. When were they invented? And what was the? Sorry, can you repeat the full question?
We'll go again closest. So closest year. When were they invented? I guess loosely, because it's hard to put an exact date on it. And what era were they first used?
Ooh.
So they were invented and not used.
Okay, I'll probably phrase that a bit awkwardly. You can just say like an era and a rough time.
Okay. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna go ballsy with it. I'm gonna say it was the Romans and AD 59.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go ballsier and say the
The
Egyptian.
Mesopotamians. It was Adam or Eve.
Yeah. No, Well, I want to go BC. No, I don't want to go BC. Do I want to go BC?
I feel like
yeah.
it depends whether that. Like,
Let's go,
somehow I can imagine blinds. Not that there's much difference, but like.
I guess it depends on your definition of right. This is really stupid, but I'm kind of. Did either of you watch the animated Moses movie?
I don't think so.
No.
I'm picturing like flapping drapes of silken tents, but that might be tents and not curtains. So
Yeah,
maybe I want to change.
I'm not sure about the
change my
technicalities of my
answer.
fact, but we'll just call it like material draped with a window.
I'm gonna change my answer. I didn't give an answer, so I don't have to change my answer. My answer is gonna be, let's say, the 15th century. Let's go. I'm opposed to Ronan's ancient
You
timeline.
were
I'm gonna
right
go
the first
more
time.
recently. Fuck.
You said ancient Egyptians, I'm pretty sure.
Whoa,
God damn it.
Yeah.
that's mad.
My fact sheet says 3000 BC.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
I should have just gone with the initial reaction. I talked myself out of
I
it.
guess curtains have probably been around for as long as windows. In a way.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of,
You'd hope so.
Yeah. Otherwise,
How do we solve this problem?
Yeah. Just getting woken up with.
I think Ronan technically closest to that, so I'll give him the point.
Yeah, only a few thousand years out.
only several rise and falls of civilizations out there.
So Eminem was part of a group called D12 or the Dirty Dozen. How many members and what is the meaning behind the name?
Why does it feel like it's a trick question?
It does feel like a trick question. Nobody wants to say it, do they?
No.
There are no stupid answers.
I'm gonna say 12, and it was called D12 because there were 12 of them.
What's the D coming from though?
They all
Just the dozen.
Yeah. Go on. I didn't think of that, but I'll take that.
I've got an answer that sounds more educated than it is because it's a guess, but it sounds like I know what I'm talking about. D12, I'm gonna say, stands for Detroit, and 12 is like the postcode.
Yeah.
Oh.
D Detroit 12 postcode.
Well, that's actually wrong.
Good shout.
But I would give you an honorary bonus point for Detroit because I put that down as plausible.
And as the numbers, I'm going to say 6 because it's half of 12.
Well, there are 6 of them, but apparently they're called D12 because they all have split personalities.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's what it's.
Oh, so it's 6 people, but with
times 2 essentially.
Those are egos.
Yeah.
But Louis, that was really good. Like I don't know, just what's the word?
It's an attempt at justification, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, you broke it down quite well.
Do I get a point for getting that there were 6 of them?
Yeah, I was going to give you a bonus point for Detroit anyway, but yeah.
Oh,
Even though Detroit
I'll
is
take a bonus point. I'll take a bonus point for being wrong. Puts me in the lead.
Oh, no.
When were the peanut variety of M&Ms introduced? And actually, I didn't write the answer for this, so I'm just going to Google it quickly.
Well, that adds an interesting kind of
3000 BC.
1983.
I'm gonna go with 1962.
1954, apparently.
Oh wow!
Oh,
I don't know who was close to because I was too busy looking at the actual.
Louis took that one.
I'll take that point.
Margin.
It gives me a comfortable 2-point lead over you now, Ronan. And one of them's legit.
We're all closer to questions as well. This is
let yourself down.
I've only actually got one question left, so
oof. Okay.
Congrats on winning. But you might get a bonus point though.
Yeah, true. Okay.
I might be generous. In the film 8 Mile, I hope you've seen it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to answer this. What is Eminem's character called?
Oh. I was getting really excited there. Like, yeah, know it well. I literally don't know.
8 Ball.
8 Ball.
Jeff.
My name's Jeff.
Yeah, I genuinely can't offer.
Here's a hard one. I don't think I'd be able to get this.
Yeah, no. It would be like a real like American name, like
Cletus.
All right, I'll give you a clue. So the first part of the name is a letter from the alphabet, and then the second part of his name is an animal.
L-Dog.
I mean, L-Dog is pretty sick.
Yeah.
We did a battlefields trip in like year 8 maybe. When we went to like Belgium to see, the World War I trenches and everything. And at the end of the trip, it was like a school trip. The teachers were like, "Oh, we'll give a prize to whoever does the best like live group performance." I guess it was just something to keep them mildly entertained. And we all got together in little groups and public humiliated ourselves in front of, everybody on the trip. And our public humiliation stunt, which we won, and then it turned out the prize was Hello Kitty magazine, so it wasn't worth it. But we did a little rap collective, and my rapping name was L-Dog.
Amazing.
Nice.
I don't remember what we rapped, but it was incredibly embarrassing. So.
I scat.
Scat.
That's my best.
I almost wish his name was Scat. No, it's B-Rabbit.
Oh,
B-Rabbit.
yeah, I don't think I was gonna get that.
God,
I
never got that. Yeah.
Well, that's the end of the quiz.
That was a good quiz.
I feel like Ronan can get a bonus point for scat because he still loses, but
Yeah.
it's funny.
Oh, that's almost more patronising. Give me a sympathy point.
Sympathy point, yeah. Yeah, that was a really fun quiz. Thanks, Kieran. Thanks for picking the album again. That was really good. And thank you very much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. You can find us on all your favorite podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, etc., etc. We're also on YouTube and on SoundCloud. You can also, if you've had any thoughts or feelings about this episode, you can find us on Instagram at More or Something Else Entirely, or you can email in at moresomethingelseentirely@gmail.com. Obviously they're quite wordy tags, so you can find our links in the description of this episode, as well as timestamps to jump around. We have timestamps for all of our episodes. Give the podcast a rating if you enjoyed. Maybe find one of the polls or the discussion points underneath the episode and give us some feedback. But yeah, thanks all for tuning in. Have a good one.
I think it's quite amazing that you might break the law, but also you're a wonder in your own way.
The communists have nothing to offer but fat cheeks and eyeglasses and lying policemen. And the capitalists proffer napalm and money in green suitcases to the naked. And the communists create heavy industry, but the heart is also heavy.